From sunrise until sunset, and dusk until dawn, every minute of every hour of every day, on the front line, it's key workers keeping our country moving, putting themselves at risk to keep others safe, for the vulnerable, for the sick, for the young and the old. We rise to the challenge. We care, we protect, we help, we fix, we deliver for everyone. We will get through this, and it's thanks to our key workers. We're proud to represent heroes, and not all heroes wear capes. Key workers deserve recognition, protection and support. Get us on your side. Join us today.
Good afternoon from GMB London, and welcome to the edition of GMB London, GMB Me this afternoon. I'm Steve Garrick, one of the regional organisers with GMB London, and with me is Lola McAvoy, who's one of my colleagues, and she and I will be going through the order later this afternoon to introduce you to various colleagues who are going to be on the broadcast. We've got a few more just joining us now as we go on. And just before we introduce my first colleague, which is Gordon Wright, we're just going to play you a message from London's Mayor.
Hi everybody, it's Sadiq Khan here, the Mayor of London. I'm very happy to be supporting GMB and Me, which is a great way to find out about what the GMB can do for you where you work. I've always been a great supporter of the trade union movement. Not only are unionised workplaces fairer and safer, but the evidence shows they're happier and more productive too. We know this pandemic has been a wake-up call for our society, shining a light on the huge contribution made by so many unsung workers. From our amazing NHS and social care staff to the teachers, support staff, delivery drivers, shop assistants, cleaners, and transport workers who keep our country going. That's why it's so vital that we have unions who will continue to stand up for working people and their rights, because that's what trade unions do. That's why we need them, and that's why I'm proud to support GMB and Me.
Well, I'll pass you over to our colleague Gordon White now, who is going to tell you a little bit more about GMB Union and unions in general and what they do. Good afternoon, Gordon.
Thanks, Steve. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Gordon White, and I'm a regional organiser with GMB London Region, like Steve. I'm really keen to take a few minutes to talk about what is a union, because I'm conscious that not everyone is as familiar with it as we are. I know that before I was involved in the GMB, all I knew about unions was what the press told me, and that was pictures of strikes and stories of union barons. The reality is very different from that. In its simplest form, a union is a group of workers who support each other. If you take two colleagues working together as a team and watching out for each other, you have the very essence of a union. They can learn from each other and work together to get the job done more efficiently, more safely. They can provide support for each other when times are tough, and they can be there for each other. Now, when I first started working, I was working in a supermarket, and I was buddied up with a mentor. And they showed me the ropes, and they showed me where to go for my break time, and it was great. But in that supermarket, there was a mess room and there was a vending machine, and the content of that vending machine was, to be frank, inedible. And everybody moaned about it, but nothing got done because there was no organisation, no unity, and no union. Now, to get over the sake of a vending machine, that seems pretty minor. But what if the issue that people were getting upset about was something a bit more serious? You know, if it was a forklift that was faulty, or a bullying boss, how would we have sorted that? And ultimately, if we'd got some organisation, my break times might have been a bit more bearable. So, in simple terms, we're talking about getting organised and how the GMB can help with that. Now, the GMB has been around for 130 years, and we help people get organised in their workplace. We provide training and advice and support to you in your workplace, and we can help you to understand what protections and rights the law affords, and it helps you build the lines of communication with your management so that your managers can know the concerns of you, their staff. And then we can help make those changes and improvements in your workplace and ultimately your lives. Most good managers realize that having happy, healthy, and safe staff is good business sense. And happy, safe staff are more loyal, more motivated, and more inclined to help the business, the employer, through tough times, exactly like we're going through now. And I think now it's more important than ever that we're looking out for each other and supporting each other. Times are crazy difficult with all the uncertainty, with homeschooling, and everyone's just trying to do their best. But now is when we need to have each other's backs. And that is one of the unique strengths of the GMB. We're a general union. So not only are we supporting care staff workers and school support workers and people working in ASDA and people across the front line all the way through this pandemic, but actually because we're working with all of them, we're in the unique position to draw the strength from each other. And this is a really good event where we can hear some of the challenges and some of the campaigns that we're running across all the sectors, and we can reach out and support each other in that way. So whilst trade unions do sometimes call strikes, and in fact we've got brothers and sisters from British Gas out at the moment fighting against fire and rehire, and we'll hear some more about that later, it's never the first option, and it's always after other things have been, all the other options and negotiations have been exhausted, most of which is behind the scenes and most people don't see it. And it's certainly not on the orders of some union baron, but it's the democratic voice of the members standing together. So the last thing I just wanted to quote that great union representative as Maximus Decimus Meridius, the gladiator, says, whatever comes out of those gates, we've got a better chance of survival if we work together. You understand? If we stay together, we survive. Now, Steve, I don't know if there's any questions or any comments on that, but I'm more than happy to field those. Although I can't hear you, Steve. Steve, there might be a mute.
Forgive me, I'm muted. It's the biggest word or phrase that anyone uses nowadays. Excuse me, you're on mute. So basically, we haven't had any questions in yet, but ultimately, the key here is that if people have got questions, please feel free to message us with those questions, whether it's for Gordon about unions or any of our other colleagues who are on this afternoon. This is recorded, so you can come back to it later. We'd love to see you. And I'm going to now get a next message out from one of our ex-colleagues who's now an MP, and her name is Sarah Owen. You may know her. She was one of the first BAME Chinese background members of Parliament who's recently elected, and here's her message.
Doesn't matter what industry you work in or what job you do, GMB is always on your side. Whether you're a British gas worker working to keep our homes warm, whether you're a care worker or a paramedic working hard to keep our loved ones safe throughout this pandemic and beyond, or whether you're a Hermes delivery driver who was working all the hours God sends to supply us, keep us stocked with everything that we need and connected with people that we love. It doesn't matter what you do, GMB will be there on your side. And now more than ever, it is important to have that collective voice and to fight and face those challenges together. And especially with Brexit, with the pandemic, but also in the face of a Tory government that is cutting services that we all work in or that we rely on. And I know this, having had the experience of working in local government, working as a care worker, working in our public sector. I was a GMB member, I became a GMB rep, became a GMB officer, and now I'm a GMB supported MP. And I have never been prouder to say that I am a GMB member, because when it comes down to it, when it really matters, GMB as a union is there for you.
Coming through now, Lola, if you'd like to introduce yourself, and I know we've got with Lola this afternoon Donna Thomas, who's kindly joining us. So I'll pass you over to the capable hands of Lola, and Lola will introduce you to.
Thanks, Steve. Hiya, Donna. Okay, so my name's Lola McAvoy. I'm a GMB NHS organiser. Before I started working for the GMB, I was a member for many years in unorganised workplaces. So I was a member because I joined, because I always knew that you need a union in case something goes wrong, but I wasn't involved in much of the union activity, and I didn't hear about what was going on in the wider workplaces that the GMB represents until I decided to get organised and get involved with the equality strand, GMB Sisters. So that's where the women get together and we organise campaigns that around issues that affect women predominantly, and try and make change in the workplace through that. And it was a real eye-opening experience. And I would encourage anybody who's in a workplace where they're not that active, or they're thinking, oh, I'd quite like to make a difference, I could probably contribute, just to inquire, get involved, drop us an email, and there's lots that you can do. So I've asked my absolute legend of a branch president, Donna Thomas. She's been on the front line throughout this whole pandemic and long before in the ambulance service. And I've asked her to come on so that we can talk a little bit about what GMB's been doing in the NHS and her experience on the front line. So thank you, Donna. Hi. I think I can't hear you. I think potentially, I don't know if you've been muted as you came into the studio. Yeah.
There we go.
Classic. So Donna, tell us a bit about how you first got involved with GMB. What's your GMB story? Sorry, I think it might still be muted. I think there we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So when I joined the ambulance service 10 years ago, I was accidentally put in the wrong area. So I joined in Essex and should have been working in the Chelmsford area. But then literally a few weeks before I went out onto the road after I'd done my training, which was like 3 months, I was told I was being stationed in a different area, which would have meant about 102-mile round trip per shift. So I was told that I could move, I could put a transfer in. The day I went to my new station for my first day, I put a transfer in and it wasn't received incredibly well. I joined the union. The union had come in and spoke to all us new joiners, and I joined the union, and I went and spoke to my union rep, and they said, oh yes, you need to change. And it just barreled out of control. The union lady that I dealt with left, so I was sort of on my own. So I'd always worked for myself for many years, and had worked abroad for many years. So I wasn't really up on unions or even working for someone, if I'm honest, because I'd always been self-employed. So I went through policies and I did it all my own way. And after a little bit of a battle and gathering some evidence and threatening constructive dismissal, which I had evidence for, which again we all know is probably, as union people, one of the most difficult things to prove, I had evidence of it. I was moved very quickly. And then I think the area branch lead at the time was sort of very impressed with my forcefulness with the ambulance service of getting my very quick transfer and the way I did it. So they'd asked me to be a rep. So, and obviously GMB is not and still isn't a recognised union with the company that I work for, the East of England. And it was very small. It was a new union. And I sort of jumped on board 10 years ago and sort of started to think, well, actually, you know, I was always a really good employer because I used to employ people abroad and was always fair, you know, even if there's always that favourite employee I had and the not so favourite, but it didn't really matter. I always treated everyone fairly and absolutely equally. So for me, it was it's about fairness really, and making sure that people, and when you're working for a massive organisation, it's frightening. As an individual, it's frightening. And being in the healthcare sector, we have a lot of issues. It's not like working in an office and the office manager doesn't like you. You know, we've got the public that complain about us or, you know, and they congratulate us. But there's lots of different things. And especially being in the healthcare industry where you've got healthcare professionals that are registered, there's a whole process of complaints. If there's near misses, you've got all different, you know, GDPR, duty of candour, everything like that. So when you're an individual that comes to work and does your work, you don't really have that insight of what's going on. And when you're called in and there's an issue with sickness or, God forbid, something happens, you need someone like me to tell you that it's all going to be okay, or this is how we're going to do it. And sometimes it's even like, do you know what? I think this is, you know, perhaps you should start thinking about another career somewhere else. And, you know, it's not an easy job being a representative, but 9 times out of 10, it's a very thankless job because people remember you when you do really well, and when things don't go their way, you're not so favourable. But you've got to be that sort of person, because at the end of the day, for me, it's all about what's fair and supporting people and reassuring our colleagues, because we work so hard on the front line that they do need that little bit of extra oomph. So that's really why I got in and stayed into it, and then got voted branch president. It seems a long time ago, and it seems that I've been voted in every year since. So excellent. That's the way it's been. Yeah.
So for those, thanks, Donna. For those people who aren't familiar with structures, tell us a little bit about what it means to actually be a branch president. What does that actually mean?
Well, to be honest, I mean, my branch secretary, Chris, the two of us together really have single-handedly brought this union up, and we sort of have to deal with everything. So when we go and deal with things like negotiating for recognition, going up to have monthly meetings, as the branch president and the branch secretary, we go and represent our members, and our members can come to us, and when there's issues, managers come to us. So I support the reps in every area as well. So if they have an issue, they'll come and speak to me. You know, we've got little groups, we've got little chat groups, and we throw things about. If someone has a really big issue that they feel that they're not happy to deal with, say someone's coming up for a capability and they're like, I don't feel confident enough to do it, then obviously as branch president, I take responsibility. It's sort of like being the mum of the branch. I sort of look after everyone. So I just, you know, I look after everyone and everything, and make sure the branch secretary's got everything he needs, and sort of, you know, when there's trouble in the ranks, I'm sort of rolled out really as well. Yeah. So to sort that out.
You're kind of like a guardian angel though, aren't you? So
I am.
Basically, when people need you, you're there to support, and then you run wider campaigns as well.
Yeah,
so
I do.
Tell us a little bit about how the pandemic has affected your role on the front line, and how being in the union has supported that.
Okay, so the pandemic has obviously been a very difficult, I mean, the ambulance service was always very, very busy anyway. It's always been a very busy service. And, you know, ambulance services, you know, we make the best of everything, you know, we really do. You know, it's really hard for any ambulance service to keep up with the amount of equipment that's needed. You know, there's a lot of wastage in this industry. You know, if you open up a bag at a scene and there's blood and petrol everywhere, and you've got things in that, the whole thing has to go, whether it's been opened or not, because they're paper backed and you open. For obviously for infection control, for obviously our safety, future patient safety, everything gets thrown away. So sometimes it's a really wasteful environment. So, but when the pandemic came, obviously it just came out of the blue. You know, it was, everyone was laughing. You know, Donald Trump was saying, inject yourself with, oh, it's a cold, it'll be gone within a couple of months. And I think that's exactly what we all thought. And it was the same. You know, I'll be honest with you, when I went, oh, it'll be just like another dose of flu. Oh my God, were we all so wrong? And of course, there was this sudden urge for everybody to get PPE. So no one knew what to do. Ambulance services didn't know what to do. We didn't.
That's your masks, isn't it? That's your masks. That's your
So we didn't. Yeah. So, and we were told so many different things by Public Health England. So first of all, it was like you only were allowed to wear PPE if the person had a cough. You know, so we were going into people that obviously now we know COVID presents in many different ways. I myself had COVID for 5 weeks. Never once did I cough, but I had COVID. And it was, you know, our managers didn't know, and there was a worry about PPE, people were hanging on to PPE, and there was lots of people's nervousness. So it wasn't just about PPE, it was about people who needed to shield, you know, who was allowed to shield, who wasn't. And it was very, very difficult. I myself live with a high risk person, not because he's ill, but because he's Black West Indian. So as time's gone on, it seems that people of colour tend to suffer with COVID more than anyone else. So, but there was a lot of people that still live with their parents who were over 70, but because there wasn't any restrictions for them, they'd come and they'd speak to me and go, look, I'm really worried about mum and dad, you know, they haven't got a letter from the doctors, but I'm worried about them taking it home. And especially at that time, qualified staff. So anybody from a technician up to a paramedic was told that we were the ones that had to go into every patient. So every shift you could work with someone who was unqualified, and we started to say that wasn't really fair, because obviously we were getting just completely and utterly, you know, exposed again and again and again. And then it started to get to a point where we were beginning to see a lack of PPE and things like aprons. You know, I mean, we've got the white aprons, which they have deemed useful, but you know, we're going into people's houses, touching their stuff, you know, the whole family's got COVID, you're touching up against everything they've been coughing on. And it was very, very difficult. So to try and stay neutral was very difficult, because I could understand that the ambulance service had to go by Public Health England's recommendations. But also, you know, staff were feeling I had to then go into managers and say, look, staff don't want to do this. We're very scared. You know, we've not been given a pay rise for 10 years, and you want us to go in and risk our lives, but we're not just risking our lives now. We're risking our families' lives because we're taking it home. So it was very, very difficult to try and keep that even balance as a union person. It really was very difficult, but it was very good because I could take things to management and ideas to management and speak to high managers about the lack of, you know, the lack of PPE that we were having at the time, and then they would reassure us, which then could reassure staff.
Well, I think as well, Donna, you did a fantastic job, because you fed in those concerns to the wider GMB ambulance structure, and then we were able as a union to feed that at a national level to government, which did result in a change and an upgrading to the PPE guidance, protecting hundreds and thousands of staff across the country. So, you know, that was absolutely badass of you. Totally brilliant, as well as lots of other ambulance colleagues have been feeding in throughout the pandemic, using their GMB reps and stepping up, make sure that all of you are protected at work. I think it's interesting that you talked about the pay issue, because obviously we're just about to embark on our big pay campaign for pay justice for our NHS staff, and like you said, over the last 10 years, we haven't had a proper pay rise for NHS staff, and the pandemic has shone a light on the real need for a pay rise, not just for recognition in COVID times, but for retention of staff all the time, because you've told me a number of times about the mental health stresses of being in a frontline role. So do you want to just talk a little bit quickly about
I'm afraid we're actually slightly over, Lola, at the moment, for our next guest. What I'm thinking we might do. So sorry. What I thought we might do to make this work better, because I know also a question came in from Gary Harris that I hope we could get an answer on low traffic neighbourhood schemes and the February schemes and how that might be affecting the ambulance service, is maybe for us to do also a separate session on this. I'm mindful that we've also got Unmesh Desai just waiting in the wings along with Dennis Bartholomew to talk about BAME issues, and because we've got so many people joining us this afternoon.
That's fine,
yeah, so Donna, it's not that we don't want to hear, it's just that we don't have because frankly I could listen to this for hours, so please forgive us for moving on, but look, thank you for joining us, and hopefully we'll get to see you soon. If we could have you back in later this afternoon to answer some questions, if we could do that, that would be great. Obviously we want to assist.
Steve, sorry, Donna's got a night shift.
So, I'm starting a night shift at 6. So you've got me out of bed early.
Yeah,
thank you. Okay, well look, yeah, hopefully we'll see you on another broadcast soon. Look, in the meantime, I'm just going to introduce both Dennis Bartholomew and Unmesh Desai, and wave goodbye to Donna there.
Bye, take care.
Stay safe.
And then basically hand over to Unmesh and Dennis, who are going to speak about BAME issues. Unmesh Desai is a London Assembly member. He's based in East London, and I'm going to leave the screen now because Unmesh can speak for himself along with Dennis, I'm sure. Thanks.
Hi. Sorry. Should I kick off?
Yes, go on, Unmesh.
Okay. Yeah, firstly, I hope people can see me and hear me. I'm doing this on my mobile phone. For some reason, I could not open this program on my laptop. Look, I've got about 5-6 minutes to talk about BME communities and City Hall. So really, I've got 5 points. Why I am in the GMB and what the GMB means to me. And I think Donna and Gordon already said it. Gordon talked about times being tough and we all need to stick together. And Donna talked about fairness. I think those two things actually, for me, is what trade unionism is all about. Trade unions were formed to fight for working people, organize working people, for a better society, better working conditions. And the trade unions gave birth to the Labour Party to fight for political representation, because it's only through politics that we can actually get somewhere. So I'm proud to be a Labour member and equally proud to be a GMB member. For me, the GMB and the Labour Party are two different sides of the same coin. And that's why I'm proud to be a GMB-supported London Assembly member at City Hall. My first exposure to the GMB was actually through a union called Apex, which actually then became part of the GMB. Where I lived in Northwest London, where a very famous strike led by mainly a largely Asian female workforce, the Grunwick strike of 1976 to 78. I lived literally on the doorsteps of the factories. I couldn't get away from the strike. This was a group of so-called immigrant women, being ruthless, exploited, low pay, not had to get permission to use the toilets and so on. And so they organized, formed a trade, joined the Apex. Ultimately, the strike was lost in the short run, but disputes like Grunwick's, you never lose them. It actually brought about consciousness amongst communities, BME communities. We need to join a trade union, organize. And trade unionism, for me, the beauty is it brings people from different backgrounds, different communities, different nationalities all together, because what we have in common is far more than what divides us. And there are enemies out there seeking to divide us. Forces of fascism, racism, nationalism, ultra-nationalism. And we've seen a rise of these forces over the last few years, both in this country and in Europe. So we always got to be vigilant. And that's why I'm glad that the trade unions are at the forefront of the fight against the far right, because they seek to divide us. Trade unions seek to unite us. And that is why I'm in the GMB. The GMB's values of equality, solidarity, fairness, and keeping in touch with ordinary working communities, working class communities are my values. And that's why for me, the GMB is my union. So I'm a member of City Hall. The London Assembly, compared to the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, is not that well known, I suppose, because the mayoral system inevitably gives the Mayor of London, elected by over 1 million people. Well, Sadiq had over 1 million votes, so he's got the most powerful individual mandate of any politician in Western Europe. But the Assembly does have a role to play. We are there to scrutinize the Mayor, but for me, the Assembly is also a platform to actually fight for GMB values, GMB politics, GMB policies. And let me say, time is limited, but I'm chair of the police committee. I'm also a member of the health committee, the economic committee. The reason I went on the economic committee is because of COVID, and how, as we come out from COVID, how I can fight for small businesses, but also trade unions and people in jobs that are threatened, and in fact, are being threatened right now by the pandemic. I sit on the budget committee as well, and something called oversight committee, which has an oversight of the whole GLA. So apart from scrutiny as the mayor, my job is to actually fight for my constituency, which is the whole of East London, City of London, Tower Hamlets, Newham, Barking Dagenham, to promote my constituency, to attract investment, but to make sure that everyone benefits from the investment. Too often in the past, communities have not benefited from regeneration programs, and COVID makes it even more imperative that as we begin the task of recovery, and there will be a recovery at some stage, that working communities are best placed to actually benefit from all the from any sort of recovery programs. I suppose in terms of BME communities, let me give a specific example how I use City Hall. As chair of the police committee, the mayor's done action plan after the summer of protests, the brutal murder of George Floyd, and what we saw in up in other countries, spontaneous demonstrations, marches, pickets, people coming out against police racism, because it exists in this country as well. It's not just America. So the mayor's action plan seeks to actually build a bridge between Black communities and the police and address some of the structural racism issues. Before the mayor did his action plan, I did a little short report, Policing with Consent, where I looked at 5 areas: recruitment, retention, training, operational practices, because that is what matters, stop and search, Section 60 search operations, where whole communities of police are given powers to carry out stop and search without having a reasonable belief to carry out those stop and searches. The use of tasers, very important issue in BME communities, the use of tasers against young Black males. And finally, community engagement. How do communities engage meaningfully with the police, and the police are actually made to be accountable? So that's my role at City Hall. Some of the GMB issues are picked up at City Hall. I said earlier, for me, City Hall is a platform to fight for GMB values and policies. The British gas dispute, firing and rehiring on lower terms and conditions, absolutely disgusting, abhorrent practice. Employers are using COVID as an excuse to attack their workforces. So I asked a question to the mayor at mayor's question time, got him to make a public statement. And to be fair to the mayor, he was extremely supportive. He says simply not on what British Gas are doing. He's put his message on social media. I've written to British Gas, and I will continue to use City Hall as a platform to fight for our members who are being threatened by British Gas with this completely unacceptable policy of firing and rehiring. We had a similar situation at British Airways, so I joined the protests outside Downing Street in July to add my voice to our members in the aviation industry. And I'm calling for the government to extend support to the wider aviation sector over the next few months. Lecturers at UEL, University of East London, are threatened again, the same thing, firing, rehiring. So I've been working with the PCS, with the the lecturers' union to safeguard, to defend those jobs. Young workers, mainly female, a lot of them BME members of our BME communities at the Tate Gallery in London have been sacked. The government's given £7 million to Tate Gallery, which is not short of a bob or two. 1.2 billion pounds to the creative and art cultural industries, and yet Tate have actually used COVID as an excuse to sack these workers. And the PCS union has been quite active, has been very active, in fact. So I've been working with them. Finally, I know Dennis is waiting to come in, talking about COVID. As a member of the health committee, we looked at the issues. Why are BME communities disproportionately affected by COVID? There are a number of reasons why. Public Health England has done 2 inquiries. But look, what COVID has done is shown the inequalities in our society and the structural racism. COVID has just exacerbated those equalities. And it took 2 studies by Public Health England. The Mayor of London's called for a public inquiry, and so and called it a support. We have the vaccination program, which I fully support. I know there are misgivings, but it's very important, as we saw with the Black MPs from all parties who came together in the last few days to make a call that no matter what your reservations are about the vaccine, those are unfounded. Yes, there are historical reasons why in BME communities there's reluctance among some sections of the communities, not all, the way that vaccines have been used in colonial Africa against the indigenous population in the past. So there are historical reasons, but the vaccine is a lifesaver. And so I've added my voice to everyone calling for the vaccine to be rolled out as quickly as possible. As chair of the police committee, I've asked for police officers in London to be given a priority once we get past the over 70 plus group and care workers. And I think we're going to fight for the vaccine to be given to all frontline workers as quickly as possible. I think in terms of BME communities, there are particular issues of messaging that the government is still not addressing. So I'm concentrating my work on ensuring that our messages go out in different languages, using different communication channels to ensure that BME communities are fully sort of aware of the vaccination program and encouraged to take it up. There are other medical issues, vitamin D, the rollout of vitamin D, not just to BME community, to BME communities in particular, because research has shown that the deficiency of vitamin D in BME communities is a major reason why they are disproportionately represented in the death figures. So I think those are sort of underlying issues underlying the pandemic that I and colleagues of the health committee at City Hall are trying to address. I think I've gone over my time, so I'll stop.
Kind of a little unmatched, because we've eaten in a bit to Dennis's time. There were a couple of questions that came up that I don't know. It's not that I don't want to get the answers from you, but I am mindful of time. So what I might do is arrange for a separate event, because there's a question about worker rights here that's come up from James. There's another one that's come up from Simon here about helping out private hire drivers, and obviously we'd love to hear from you on those fronts. But I'm mindful that I also wanted to bring in Dennis Bartholomew to this, so he can tell you a little bit about his work. I suspect we might run over a little this afternoon with all of the people who are speaking, just because there is so much to tell people about where we are in the workplace and what's going on. Dennis.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Lola, and thank you, Unmesh. I hope to speak in a short time to tell you about the thousands of cruelly exploited BAME workers in London who are labouring under the so-called gig economy. But firstly, let me explain a little of who I am and what I've done. After retiring from full-time employment, I decided to return to work that I did during some of my breaks in employment, which was driving as a minicab driver. And I joined Uber. And initially, I found that it was okay. It was better than some of the companies that existed. But after a while, I realized that it was extremely exploitative for the reasons I'm going to explain now. But let me explain what Uber is. Uber is essentially, despite what they describe themselves as, a minicab company with a very, very powerful app. It provides centralized control. It's a regulation busting company. and it loads all the risk onto the drivers who currently under the law are considered, with a court case pending, to be self-employed. And how it attracts custom is through low fares. But these low fares are at the expense of the drivers, at the expense of the people who provide the income to Uber. What's labor relations like working for one of these companies, like Uber, for example? For most, the majority of workers are Asian, African, and belonging to other BAME communities. For them, their work is not a gig. It is what's called precarious employment. And why is it precarious? Because they can be dismissed instantly. They can be dismissed for no reason. They can be reported to the police by Uber or the company without any justification. They bear all of the risks, the purchase price of their vehicle, the insurance, which costs thousands, the taxation, no holiday pay, no pension, no sickness or other benefit. And with COVID, the situation faced by these drivers is dire. It's like playing Russian roulette. Eventually, you're going to get shot. Now, why do they do it? For the majority of BAME workers working for these companies, it is a means to get employment, especially in the years of recession inflicted upon us by this government. For some, like in my case, there is flexibility, or there was flexibility. For many, whilst it's a skill job, it is requiring low entry requirements. Now, how do I know about all of these things? After working for Uber for a little while, somehow I got in touch with Steve and with Simon, who is one of the viewers. And I immediately joined the GMB. I joined their professional drivers branch. And as would have it, I went on holiday and I came back and I found I was the Uber rep. And I've represented over 70 drivers in the years that I was a rep. And not once has Uber recognized us. The only time they recognized us is when I went to court on behalf of a driver alongside the major case that's being conducted by the union, and they spent thousands of pounds getting expensive lawyers to write to me when what I was writing to them about would have cost just a few £100s. I have represented drivers who have been reported to the police because they refused to play music for drunk passengers. I have represented drivers who have been alleged to have committed criminal acts but haven't been reported to the police. I have interceded with Transport for London to save licenses of drivers whom Uber have reported them to TfL with no justification whatsoever. So I think I've seen almost everything that Uber and these other companies can do. However, from my experience, and although I've sort of, for personal reasons, moved away from the day-to-day work within the trade union, I'm reasonably positive. I think that those of you who are watching have got a fantastic role to play. And I think that COVID and austerity has demonstrated to non-unionized workers the importance of joining a union. And of course, I would say, join the GMB. And I would say to all of you, carry in your back pocket or in your purse application forms for membership of the union. Urge any driver that you are being carried by to join a union. Join the GMB. Failing the GMB, get them to join a union. It is vital. The union will, of course, as you know, has many benefits: solidarity, strength, and resources. You are far, far more protected through a union, as we know, than being on your own. And that must be stressed to the driver the courier who delivers your parcel from Amazon, to the cyclist who delivers your food from wherever. Get them to join a union. Get them to join a union for selfish reasons. Okay?
Well, Dennis, thank you so much. Because we're incurring into other colleagues' time, what I'd like to do with both yours and Unmesh's agreement is maybe arrange to have you both come back onto another broadcast where we can devote more time to this. Dennis and Unmesh have both touched on the precarious work. We have bus drivers, couriers, Hermes and Yodel couriers. We have food delivery couriers on most of the main platforms. Are really doing perilous work for very low money. They are almost like ghosts. They're not noted for the work they do, and also a huge amount of danger in what they do. So look, thanks very much for joining us. I know that we've got to move on now, and I know there's questions from Robert Scott. What can we do to reach out to precarious workers? Robert, I'll happily talk a bit more about this and do another broadcast shortly, but one of the keys is things like this, events like this. And I know minimum wage, if the minimum wage is going to introduce £10 an hour, who's going to introduce these in parcels to our Hermes couriers? They are key workers. We are working to represent Hermes couriers. We are recognised. There will be another big message out on recognition of another company in the next week or two, as well as their drivers signing up for worker rights. We are getting there. That is a message that's coming out. I'm mindful of time, Dennis, so can I thank you for joining us? I'm going to just bring up our next video just before I introduce you to our colleague Mick Lancaster, who's going to talk about health and safety. And once again, thanks for joining us, Dennis.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you. We really do appreciate it. Here's Wes Streeting.
I'm Wes Streeting. I'm the Labour MP for Ilford North, and I also happen to be a member of the GMB. One of the reasons why I joined GMB isn't just that it does a great job standing up for the rights of GMB members at work. It's also that GMB, I think, has been at the cutting edge of the trade union movement when it comes to defending our existing employment rights and also trying to extend employment rights, particularly with new areas of the economy, which unfortunately are bringing new avenues for employers to exploit their workers. We're particularly seeing that in the gig economy, where GMB has been at the forefront of efforts to defend the rights of workers in the gig economy. But it shouldn't be up to unions like the GMB to take action through the courts. They need a government on their side defending and extending our rights at work, whether pay, terms and conditions, and people's right to work without being victims of bullying or discrimination. That's why we need a Labour government back in power in Westminster. And I look forward to working with GMB members in my community and right across the country to make sure that we win that Labour government, a Labour government that defends and extends the rights of all working people.
Well, thanks very much for that, Wes. Let me pass you over to Mick Lancaster. Hopefully you can hear us okay there. And Mick will then hand you both on to Dean Gilligan and Vaughan West, who will be speaking after about what we do in both politics and the Labour Party as well, and the work that we do there. Let me pass you over to Mick.
Good afternoon, my name is Mick Lancaster, Regional Organiser for the GMB London Region. I'm going to cover a little bit about health and safety. GMB has a proud history of protecting its members at work and campaigning for better, safer working conditions. In fact, health and safety was the very foundation that our union was founded upon over 130 years ago in 1889. Our founder, Will Thorne, organised workers at Beckton Gasworks to fight for a shorter working day. Now, fast forward that to the present day, and it looks like we'll be having the same fight again, as the Tories secretly plan to scrap legislation such as the European Working Time Directive, which will not only scrap our rights to pay statutory holiday, it would also remove safe working time limits on weekly and daily work, including rest times between shifts. When it comes to health and safety, trade unions are still as relevant today as they were back 130 years ago. Workplace fatalities and injuries are recorded each year by the Health and Safety Executive through the RIDDLE regulations. Figures for 2019 to 2020, which are the latest out, the new ones will be recorded this April, reported that in the UK there was 111 workers who lost their life through work. 581,000 workers sustained an injury at work, and 68,208 injuries were reported under the RIDDLE regulations. And there was 2,460 people died from mesothelioma deaths due to past asbestos exposure. And it's tragic that even as we speak today, our schools are still riddled with asbestos, and the government are failing to address this matter. 1.4 million working people suffer from work-related illnesses, and this is the RIDDLE official stats. And even though these figures make grim reading, the fact is that these figures are just the tip of the iceberg, as the HSC does not include work-related road traffic accidents. And if you look,
it looks like we've lost Mick from our broadcast. Hopefully we'll be able to just bring him back in straight away. I don't know where what the gremlins got in a bit. We've lost him again there. Hopefully we'll get him back in a moment. What I'm going to do is bring Vaughan West and Dean Gilligan in to the conversation and introduce them. I think Mick's back now. I'm just going to bring Mick in. Mick, can you hear us okay? Okay. I don't know if you can hear me all right. I'm going to start to bring in Dean and Vaughan as well, just because I'm mindful, obviously, that we are just very slightly behind at the moment. But did you just want to just try and just give us a little bit more information before we move on?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think before I got cut off, I was talking about the HSC stats, and even though they make grim reading, the HSC doesn't cover such fatalities such as road-related road traffic accidents. And if you look at where we're sitting now in Bedfordshire, you know, we've got the largest piece of smart motorway being rolled out. And since its rollout, we've been seeing countless of people being killed on that stretch of motorway. And I know that this is something that Sarah Owen, the MP who was talking earlier, is making a great campaign in Parliament. You know, there's thousands of people killed each day on the roads whilst carrying out work, and that's not included in these figures. The figures don't include people killed in maritime incidents, you know, and that includes the fishing industry, which has got one of the highest fatality rates per 100,000 workers, and it doesn't include people killed in aviation incidents. The HSC also fails to recognise and include one of the biggest growing contributors to workers' fatalities in the UK, which is work-related suicides. Now, it may be difficult to see how we challenge that or the government challenges that, but if you look at it in France, you know, the CEO of France Telecom, which is now known as Orange, has been jailed for 2 years, and a number of other top managers have also been prosecuted for their involvement in 19 employees over a period of time who took their own lives. So these things can be tackled by the government if they want to be, if there's a will to be. For instance, in France, you know, if tragically someone does take their life and there's any link to the workplace is held accountable. And that's a big issue which I think that trade unions and the government needs to tackle. This year's figures will be expected to be higher due to COVID-19, but this will depend on how many employers have reported workers' fatalities through the RIDDLE regulations. This is a prime example of why the HSC figures do not show the full picture. And we already know there is an underreporting of occupational transmitted cases of COVID-19 to the HSC. And alongside this, there's only been a handful of improvement notices handed out by the HSC to workplaces. So when it comes to health and safety, who are you going to choose to protect you at work? Will it be the government? 10 years of this government's austerity measures has had a crippling effect on health and safety enforcement. The HSC budget has been cut by £100 million. That's 46%. And local authorities have no ring-fenced budget for workplace health and safety enforcement. And this has led to a 64% reduction in local authority enforcement notices, and proactive inspections have dropped by 95% between 2010 to 2017. So it's not going to be the enforcement agencies protecting you, and it's certainly not going to be this government. Or will it be the employer? And as we know, big businesses on the back of the Brexit are now continuing to lobby the government to slash red tape as they describe health and safety legislation as a burden on business. Or you can choose a GMB. GMB have an army of safety reps on the ground in workplaces across all sectors and industries of the economy. Trade union safety reps are covered by a set of regulations called the Safety Rep and Safety Committee Regulations. And these regulations give trade union safety reps the power to inspect the workforce, carry out their own investigations following on from a dangerous occurrence or injury within the workplace, raise health and safety matters on behalf of our members with the employer, work with relevant enforcement agencies such as HSC or local authority, and to be consulted in good time. And this is a really important point. It's to be consulted in good time on any matters that affect our members' health and safety. And where there is not a committee, they can set up a health and safety committee as well. The GMB is there to give you a collective voice within the workplace. An employer is much more likely to listen to a collective organised group of workers raising a health and safety issue than a number of individual workers raising the same issue individually. And with the Tories eyeing up hard-fought employment rights and employers increasingly firing and rehiring on a bargain basement of terms and conditions, trade union safety reps can be the last barrier to defend workers' rights within the workplace. So the question's really simple. Who are you going to choose to protect you in the workplace?
Mick, just before we run to go on with Gordon, pardon me, with Vaughan and Dean, just a quick message came from Sarah Owen, who's looking in to say, thanks, Mick, you're absolutely right, we health and safety and HSE figures. If members want to have their say on smart motorways, please check out the poll on Sarah Owen's website, sarahowen.org.uk/smart motorways poll. Smart motorways, we know, are a big problem. The one thing I want to just move on to also just to say, look, health and safety, we're there for you in the workplace. Accidents are happening every single day and people remain silent. It's really, really, really important that you have a union on your side for this. Mick, I'm going to move on to both Gordon and Dean because I'm really mindful that we are running a bit behind this afternoon. But thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, let me start by just introducing myself and my friend and colleague, Dean. My name's Vaughan West. I am the Regional Political Officer for GMB London, hopefully maintaining our links between the union and the Labour Party. And Dean is one of our leading lay activists. He's an elected representative in Enfield Council and the GMB convener there. He's also on our regional committee and the National Executive Central Executive Committee. But in the context of this, he's also a Harrow councillor. So I thought I'd start by asking Dean, as a GMB activist, why did you want to become a Labour councillor, Dean?
Well, I didn't. It never entered my mind to become a councillor. And I think the work that I got involved in within the GMB led me along that path. Many years ago, a good friend and somebody you know very well, Gary Doolan, was badgering me to get a bit more political. And the reason for that was that he demonstrated to me, and as you have done, and as actually the GMB has done consistently, and yeah, the likes of Sarah Owen and Dawn Butler are testament to that in our movement. But it came across as we were struggling and fighting employers. And then I was shown a different way, a political way, where we would get actively politically involved and have our say there. So I saw that as the opportunity to marry both positions up and get better conditions and rights, not only for our members, but also our communities. Because, as you know, we are a campaigning union, and not only do we campaign for our members' rights, We also have a very big input into our communities, and one way of doing that was to go down the political road and become a councillor.
So let's just explain a bit more. The Labour Party was founded in 1900, and here we are 120 years later, and we're still in there. We were one of the founding parts of the Labour Party because we believed working people needed a voice. That's increased with people like you as well, Dean, about giving working people a voice at local level. So what do you think the big issues for us as part of the Labour Party are at the moment?
Well, I think the Labour Party is now redefining itself. Again, we need to get back on track. We need to go out there. Look, over the last few campaigns that we've done, and obviously elections that we've done, it seemed that we'd lost our working voice, our working class voice. Working class people moved away from us. And again, why I'm active, why I'm in the political arena, is to be that working class voice. The working and middle classes, we seem to have lost, and we're redefining ourselves. And the transition from rep in the GMB to being politically aware, being politically active, becoming a councillor. I also sit on the National Policy Forum for the Labour Party, and I also sit on the regional executive of the Labour Party. These were all transitions given to me and educated by the GMB to me. So the GMB supported me along that journey, as it has done for many, many people. We do have an awful lot of GMB councillors. And I think that our party now needs to have that strong voice, particularly where we are with this pandemic, particularly where we are with what potentially could be the excuse of another austerity because of the pandemic. And I think that we now need to have a real strong voice against allowing this government to use the pandemic to bring in further austerity measures, and once again attack those basically lower paid workers. I mean, those that work in the public sector, those that work in our shops and retail. These low paid work and within the NHS as part of the public sector. They went through 9 years of struggle through the 2010 austerity measures, and I can see this government actually introducing austerity measures and blaming the pandemic. So I think we need a strong voice, and I think that through the political agenda of the GMB, and it works hand in hand. You've got the GMB trade union, we've got the political element of it, and the political and industrial strength is what we need to kick back against potentially further austerity measures and further hardship for our communities and our members.
I couldn't agree more, Dean, because I think as somebody's put in a question a minute ago, or a comment a minute ago, is that there's not enough ordinary working people in the corridors of power, in councils or in the House of Commons. And I think one of the reasons that we were a founding member of the GMB, of the Labour Party, why the GMB was a founding member of the Labour Party, and is still in there fighting, is to ensure that ordinary working people have a voice in those corridors and change the way that this country is governed for the better. And like you, that's the reason that I'm a party member and involved, like you, in a lot of the structures of the party, because we need to make sure working people's voices are heard from top to bottom.
But let's not gloss over this. This government and the government beforehand, the Tory governments, have attacked the trade union movement time and time again. The recent attack on the trade union bill was to remove our political levy. And once we've done that, they try to take away our political strength within the powers that be. And I see that Lola's asked, how can we get more involved? Look, everyone can get involved by joining the Labour Party. Join the Labour Party. Become active within the GMB, become a rep. You know, you're there in the office there, you yourself and Marion Healy. We have political officers within every branch of the GMB, and therefore start getting involved that way. But I'll give you a very quick example, because I see Steve has popped up and he's probably telling me it's our time, mate. But, you know, before I became a councillor, but I was politically involved and part of the Labour Party. In my Labour authority where I represent, I was able to knock on the door of all those councillors because I was in the party. I was a party member, and therefore I could negotiate not only with the directors of the local authority, but I could also negotiate with a political party of that authority. That then gave another string to the bow, and I learned that, and that was the learning that I took on board. That, you know, if you're getting nowhere with the directors and the elements that are governing the workplace, you go political on them. You start talking to the politicians and the rationale as to why you are against what's happening here. You know, we take the recent austerity measures. It was restructure after restructure. There'll be a lot of people on here that know what I'm talking about here. Restructure after restructure after restructure, and that was working people that work for local authorities actually live in the area. So how is it a political party is condoning a restructure, putting people out of work, when it's the residents that are there, that are their electorate, they're the ones that will be voting them in? That was the explanation I was given to that party at the time. They're saying, well, look, hold on a minute, you are now turning people away from you. There's got to be other ways. The same as look at our high streets. Our high streets are being decimated right now. Wilco's is being attacked with the potential fire and rehire tactics as well, you know, in the Wilkinson stores. We've got to look after these people, and the way to do that is to go political in a lot of areas, you know, and that political strength we've had West Street, and we've had Sarah Owen, we've had Sadiq Khan speaking. We can open the doors to those people and talk to those people, and that's what we need to do, talk to those people.
Dean, that's a perfect segue into actually hearing from Gareth Thomas, who's the local MP for Harrow right now. Vaughan and Dean, honestly, again, I've realised this afternoon that we're covering so many subjects over such a short time that we have to have everyone back for some longer pieces and maybe a few more events just like this, so people can ask and exchange messages and questions, because frankly this is the only other way we can reach out to people and give them that important message.
Can I just say to end, I mean, with elections coming, some big elections coming up, getting Sadiq re-elected and getting people like Umesh re-elected in the GLA, and elections right across the east of England, I think we need to do another podcast like this, or another broadcast like this, perhaps in March, as the elections are looming, to make sure that people really do get involved with some of our grassroots political work.
I think yes, and
sorry, Stephen, I would just like to say, join a union, preferably the GMB, get involved, get active in your branch, and then also join that Labour Party as well. But really, really, really get involved in a union. You cannot be kicking the TV and saying, I don't like this, if you haven't got yourself involved.
Thank you. After this next video, please join Lola McAvoy and Mary Goodson, who is going to be talking about the school sector. Thanks very much.
My name's Gareth Thomas. I'm the Labour MP for Harrow West and a GMB member, and also, crucially, a member of the GMB's parliamentary group. I've stood on GMB picket lines with workers at St Mary's Hospital in central London, and in my own constituency marched with GMB members against Medirest, the big corporate outsourcing giant that has contracts at Northwick Park Hospital that serves my constituency. And those disputes, we were trying to get the union properly recognised and to get rights for GMB members properly respected by those companies. Pay increased and bullying practices from the management at local level stopped. We shouldn't need a union like the GMB to stand up for workers, but there aren't enough rights written into British law. And so campaigning alongside the GMB at local level is crucially important, but also campaigning in Parliament to get changes to the law to protect workers' rights is going to be critical going forward as well. As well as backing GMB campaigns locally and obviously nationally now, there's the British Gas campaign to stop their fire and rehire tactics. I'm also a member of Keir Starmer's shadow ministerial team. I currently shadow the trade brief, and there we're trying to stop future trade deals that our country makes, not respecting workers' rights going forward, stopping the undermining of vital public services like the NHS in potential deals we might do with the United States of America going forward. Again, I shouldn't have to be, and you shouldn't have to be backing campaigns against such things. But because of the current government and the way it's organised, we have to do that work. In the end, though, in order to get more workers' rights, better workers' rights for you and for your colleagues, and to protect vital public services and get them the investment they need, then we're going to need to see a Labour government. And I'm looking forward to continuing to work with the GMB in that aim.
Great. Are we being introduced?
Hello. Hi. Can everyone see me?
No, not at the moment, Mary.
I know. I don't know what's going on. I mean, my camera's on, but what's going on? Right.
Okay. Your camera's on. Steve may be able to help on that front, but we certainly can hear you.
Yeah,
so
that's good. Okay.
Would you mind giving a quick introduction as to who you are, please?
Hi, I am Mary Goodson. I am a GMB branch secretary in the London Borough of Barnet. I'm also the chair of the Schools Forum, and yeah, that's who I am. And I've worked in schools probably for about 25 years now.
Brilliant, brilliant. So, as people are listening in, we've got Mary here to talk about schools. Schools, I mean, major issue at the moment. Myself as a rep, I've gone around representing in schools recently. So I have a couple of questions for you, Mary, if you don't mind. And one of the things that I recently, I represented at a school recently, and they were doing lateral flow testing. Is that helping? Is that helping?
Well, there's a lot of you know, conspiracy over this lateral flow testing. You know, the percentage accurate, staff feel pressurized into having to do it. Staff are being asked to do it in their own time at home and during, you know, their own time, which shouldn't be happening. There's also things like you know, we have a lot of you know, other sector workers within schools that are not actually, you know, they're contracted out. They're not getting sickness pay. That's a big issue here, because these people are coming into school. They're not being able to take these tests or whatever, but they're not getting sick pay. So they're coming in because they have to come into school. And this is a big issue with these tests. Do these tests work? At the minute, Barnet has stopped these tests. They're not using them because the public health here do not think that they're working to the capacity of what they should be. So there's more to come on lateral flow testing. I, at the minute, can't see that they're in a good place. I think, you know, there was a lot of skeptical over these tests that if you were in contact with someone positive and you took this test on the Sunday night and you were okay, then you should come into work. That's not the case here. If you are in close contact with a positive case, and this is where some schools were failing on this. So there's a whole lot of questions around it, and I don't think it's been used to the best that it could be at the minute.
So what advice would be that you would consider the best advice for staff going into work?
Well, I think the first thing staff need to do is see the risk assessment. You know, under the Health and Safety Act, that risk assessment must be shown to staff members. Individuals who had health conditions back in March that were staying at home that are now not at home, these individuals should have risk assessments themselves. Risk assessments are a big factor in here, and you know, this should be done. And I think this is the best advice I can give them at the minute, bar a lot of advice, but the risk assessment must.
And then, and on that, I was speaking recently with a couple of colleagues and regarding the risk assessments, and we know that the risk assessment will be individual to the school and not a generic risk assessment.
Absolutely.
In your position, are we getting those risk assessments overall coming in so that, you know, the GMB and the reps and the officers can view those risk assessments? We had Mick on earlier talking about health and safety.
I mean, personally, in my own personal aspect, you know, in Barnet here, I have, you know, 160 risk assessments from every school, and they will send them direct to the union as well, because, you know, that is what we, you know, what I want here. So yes, with me, absolutely. I don't know. I can't speak with other branches, but I think, you know, this risk assessment is, I can see Lola, but I can't see myself. So there you go, which is good. But there you go. So I think, yeah, I think it's working. I'm hoping it's working everywhere.
Okay, and then and on a whole, in the membership that you cover, are our members happy going into work? You know, a lot of people have been told to stay at home, and people are furloughed, well, we've got a lot of mess. Are our members happy going to work?
Absolutely not in schools. Yeah, they're not happy because they don't feel safe, and that's a big thing. However, you know, there is understanding that key workers, we need to serve key workers. Therefore, you know, these children need to be looked after. They need to be in school, and so therefore, as long as, you know, schools need to support, but they're at the minute schools are exploiting, yeah, a lot of support staff. And I think that's the main issue here.
And then, sorry, and what should members do then if they feel unsafe going into work?
Members need to, first of all, you know, speak to their rep if they have got a rep in school. If they're not satisfied, they haven't got a rep in school, then seek their branch, because that's what we're here for. Your branch is the main part of you know, your union. So you need, but there's also, you know, if you have a rep in school, the rep can take that to the head teacher on behalf of you, because we, you know, that's what they're there for, and that's what they'll do. But always put things in writing. If you're going into school and things are not right, and you feel that risk assessment has not been adhered to, then you must step up and take that up with your head. If you feel, because it's your safety, so therefore it's your duty as well to protect yourself. But we're here. Look, don't be bullied and abused by schools, yeah, because that's what I feel schools are doing at the minute. So
and
therefore,
I think you know, part of the carry on. Sorry.
I lost you, Dean. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the overriding message that we're going through this is about joining a union. Schools being headline at the moment is about those people working in schools to join a union. Keeps happening with the GMB. And then further forward, do you think that schools should reopen?
I think schools should be open for those key worker children. You know, we have to support the NHS here. We have to support our colleagues in other, you know, public sector services like waste and recycling, you know, things like that. They have to go out. Those services have to go out. So therefore, I think schools should be, but schools need to stop exploiting, you know, it's like, oh, support staff, get in here now, sit your bum down because I'm paying you for being here. That's not the case. They need to look more into, you know, using rotas like some schools are, but not all schools are doing that. Yeah, they need to be in a union, and it needs to be the GMB. Yeah, there is no other union for support staff and school staff, only us. So therefore, you know, I had a great webinar the other night on schools, and you know, it was fantastic, and I got to be one of the speakers, which was great. And I mean, we had like a phenomenal amount of people on that webinar, which was fantastic. So it was good to hear them, and it was good to be able to give them a little bit of advice. So I know we're pushed for time here, and I don't want to take up everyone's slot. So
it's very important, Mary. Schools, like I said, you know, they're headline news at the moment. And that's it on my questions. But I have one other question: is how did you get involved? What made you get involved?
Oh my God, I started working in a school in 1998 it was, I always remember, and I thought, you know, at fun, it was great. I was one of the first teaching assistants they ever had in the school. So they didn't know what to do with me. Used to leave me sitting in the staff room, which was great, but there you go. Anyway, so I think after about, you know, about 5-6 years in there, and I met a guy, someone said to me about union. I thought, God, what's that? Northern Ireland, you know, and then I lived in the sticks. We didn't know about unions, so I thought, oh, this is great. So I spoke to it, and it was actually a guy who was doing what I was doing at the time, yeah. And he was Barnett's convener, and anyway, he came in to see some of the members, and I went, oh, this is great, and I got to know him, I got to talk to him, and it was great. And then, God, I think Keith Williams, if we all know Keith, who's a national officer, Keith Williams was my biggest bane. He brought me into this union, which was great. You know, can't fault it now, but that's how I got involved. And then I just started, you know, to look after people within the workplace, and it went. Then I got, you know, seconded, and it was from an academy, so that was a good thing at the time, and that was like 6 years ago. So for an academy to do that 6 years ago when they were just coming, it was a big thing. So and that's where I'm still here.
Oh, that's great, Mary. That's brilliant. And you're still here fighting hard, aren't you, every day to protect members and encouraging more and more people to get active. So it's brilliant to hear from you. Thanks, Mary. Thanks, Dean. We're going to bring in our next guest, Chris Riley. Hi, Chris.
Hello. Right.
Chris is our expert in employment law, and we've worked together on a number of different cases, and he's going to tell us a little bit about why having expertise in employment law is important for trade union work. So tell us a bit about what you do, Chris, and about your role in the GMB movement.
Yeah, so I'm an employment solicitor. I work for Patterson and Brewer Solicitors, who are a trade union law firm. We've worked alongside the GMB for many years, I believe. I've been at P&B for 3 years now. Always worked alongside the GMB. You know, I've acted for hundreds of the union's members. We're kind of the last line of defence, you might say, in that you always hope that it can be sorted on the ground with the use of reps and officers and the like. Unfortunately, it doesn't always go that way, does it? Whether it's employment situation, disciplinary grievance, you're discriminated against, or, you know, my firm, we also do personal injury work. So whether it's an injury at work, a slip on the floor, an accident with machinery, that's where we come in. So yeah, I think the last line of defence is the best way of saying it, really.
No, that's absolutely right. And in the GMB, obviously, all of our members have access to legal advice and trade union support through legislative advice. So what's the difference between what you do and having some advice on the phone? Tell us a bit about your experience defending members.
Yeah, so like you said, that there is the support available on the phone for the union, and I suppose that could be more so in a first instance where, you know, you suddenly landed with that disciplinary letter and you think, oh my gosh, what do I do? Who do I need to speak to? I don't have a clue what I've got to be doing right now. The way that when I get involved, it's unfortunately usually after the events have unfolded. So it can be when someone unfortunately has lost their job, they've been through a disciplinary, they've been through the appeal process, it's been unsuccessful. With employment law, there are very short timeframes in which you can take action in terms of going to an employment tribunal. Can be quite complicated, but the general rule is you've got to start what's called ACAS, early conciliation, within 3 months. It's amazing how quickly, 3 months, you say that now, end of January now, so the end of April, that would be here in no time. You know, that flies by, and you've got to spend that time really wisely in terms of getting your evidence together, getting all the facts and information together. And yeah, you know, it's important that as a member, you get all that information to your reps and your officers who are there helping you to try and get everything together, so that all information can come to us to ensure that we can put the best case possible to the tribunal.
Absolutely, and you do a great job. So if you were going to give some advice to a member, say somebody, obviously we know a lot of people are facing really difficult times at the moment, say somebody wanted to wear PPE in the workplace and they were being told, oh, you don't need it, it's not a big issue, you know, there's no, and their employer were being lax on their rights at work. If that then led to them losing their job, what would be the most important thing that member had kept a record of? What should they do?
Get everything down in writing. It's amazing the amount of times that we get members that would come to us and say, oh, well, I had this discussion with this person and that was agreed, and then all of a sudden, you know, 2 days later, that's completely off the table, and the individual that the member spoke with completely disagrees and rejects that conversation ever happened. You know, whatever situation you find yourself in, even if it's, you know, someone just to confirm you just say, all right, yeah, you can work an extra 2 hours on Friday, just follow up with an email to say, oh, just to confirm, following our discussion later on, you've agreed that I can do this on such and such date. Or yeah, issues with PPE, issues with, we've had a lot of stories of people being on furlough, but then actually being contacted by employers and saying, we need you to do this, we need you to do that. And you think, well, hang on a minute, I'm on furlough, I shouldn't be working right now. If there's work available, I shouldn't be on furlough. You should be paying me 100% of my wages, not putting me on 80% and then still getting me to do the job, you know, the 100% of the job. So it's important. Grievances, that's what grievance schemes are there for. Make sure you know what your grievance policy looks like at work. It's important that if you do submit a grievance, you do get everything written down, because that can be a key evidential aspect further down the line if unfortunately we get to that stage where you need to rely on that. Ideally you don't. You know, I never want to get involved. Like you say, it's a nice job, but it's not a nice job. It's nice that we can help people out and get them the justice they deserve, but at the same time, I don't want to be involved. You know, far too many people have to help on a daily, weekly basis, especially during this pandemic. The numbers, it sounds awful, but for many people have lost work. People have, you know, it's been really difficult. As an employment lawyer, my work has gone through the roof because of how many people have been either detrimentally treated because they have raised health and safety concerns in the workplace. You hear a lot about Section 44 of the Employment Rights Act, PPE issues, that kind of thing. You know, we've seen it all during this last, you know, just short of a year. So it's been a really difficult time for many people, and it's not been nice to have those conversations with quite a few.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, and you are doing brilliant work, Chris. But I think it is interesting as well to say to everybody watching and to tell everyone that it's really important that people ask for help. So if something feels in your gut that it's unfair, it might not be covered by your workplace properly, and you should ask for advice, ask for help, use the union, use the facilities that come with your membership, because if you can get that information early, that's the best chance you get of rectifying it in the workplace, isn't it?
Massively. You know, that's what your reps and your officers are there for, and the union have, you know, the law firm union line as well there as well. So if your rep isn't quite certain, they can direct you to the relevant individual at union line. Or that's what I'm there for. You know, I'm sure that I know many of the reps in the London region now and the officers that if anyone wants to run something past me, you know, I speak to several officers on a daily, weekly basis because they just want to run something past me. And that's what we're there for. You know, we're there to help, offer as much assistance as we can. It's important, like you say, get that early call in just to run something past. It might be completely innocent. You know, there might be no issue whatsoever, but you'd be kicking yourself in 2-3 months down the line if you find out it was an issue and you didn't just ring the phone or just ask for that bit of help. That's what, you know, that's what you're part of a union for, isn't it? Help and support.
Exactly. And I just wanted to touch on quickly before we round up this section. I wanted to touch on a bit about the Equality Act, because a lot of the work that that certainly comes to me in my work is around equality discrimination, and a lot of women are finding themselves in difficult situations after maternity leave, and there's been a big spike in people looking after their children at home, obviously with the schools shut, and how that's impacting in the workplace. So can you give us a little quick rundown of sort of the employment aspect, the employment law aspect of the of equality and the issues that people are facing at the moment?
Yeah, you talk about various different groups of individuals that have been sort of adversely affected by the coronavirus COVID-19 situation. You touched upon women in particular. A lot of the childcare responsibilities do fall on women, and that shouldn't be the case. You know, it's an equal job. You know, I'm at home. You might be able to hear my kids in the background when I'm downstairs. I've been working 9 to 5. Well, 9 to 5, a lot more than that at the moment. But you know, we work from home, and it's a team effort. But unfortunately, not all employers see it that way, and they would, you know, a lot have an old school mentality of, oh well, can't your wife do this, or you know, they can do that, you know. And then there's been all the issues with furlough. So is furlough available just to look after children? Early on, that wasn't quite clear. In this kind of more recent lockdowns, that has been made more available, that if there are issues with childcare, you can go on furlough. But that's not necessarily to say that your employer wants to put you on furlough, because they might turn around and say, well, no, I want you to be able to work. I want you working from home. I don't care if you've got children in the background. I'm paying you to do a job. Absolutely, in terms of sex discrimination, disability discrimination in particular, we've seen a lot of that on the rise this year. As you can imagine, there's a lot of people in the high risk categories. If they could be security guard, hospital porters, if they've got a health condition, but they are finding themselves having to go to work and they're putting themselves in the line of fire, as it were. What protection is afforded to them?
Exactly. I was going to say that has been one of the big illuminators of the pandemic, has been obviously the amount of people who've needed to shield and what pay they get. So if you fall sick, you catch COVID at work, like a lot of our members have, and then you fall sick and you're on statutory sick pay. I mean, obviously GMB ran a huge campaign and managed to get the government to U-turn on statutory sick pay requirements, and we have won a lot of individual workplaces being able to pay full pay and not statutory sick pay to workers. But going forward, you know, if people are vulnerable to COVID-19, or in fact at risk of anything of different things people face in the workplace, to be having to forcibly shield or go on sick and then have to worry about financial implications and hardship, is just completely unacceptable now. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot more cases like that, aren't we?
Massively. It's frustrating, isn't it? You know, there's talk of this £500 payment possibly coming in, and you think even that's not enough, is it? You know, that's 10 months late, you know, that you're talking about additional extra support. And this is why you hear of many stories of individuals that may have had it or have had a symptom, but they've still gone into it because they just can't afford to take any time off. And it's not fair that someone should have to be. They talk about everyone doing their part and everyone chipping in, and you know, but it's not fair on them if they have to then take 2 weeks off, 10 days isolation, but then they find themselves down to £90 a week. You know,
exactly.
I don't think many people could live off that. So, you know,
I was going to say, Chris, just before Steve tries to cut us off, I think it's really important that we talk about how people of colour have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19 and the pandemic. And obviously the Equality Act covers race as an element that you can't be discriminated against. And the GMB have got a great toolkit which we can post about how to check if you are at risk and how to take your this risk assessment about race to your employer to make sure that you are being protected, because we know that people of colour are overrepresented in the deaths and also overrepresented in the people not being able to work from home. There's a lot of different elements that are impacting different communities. So do you think you'll be seeing a lot more cases around the Equality Act going forward?
Yeah, massively. I think that there's going to be a huge surge, you know, especially with the way that this government's handled this whole pandemic situation. You know, like you say, yeah, exactly, yeah. So it is a concerning time. We have seen a massive rise in work, and we continue to see a massive rise in work. So yeah, I think, you know, particularly individuals with race, you hear a lot about discrimination. There is obviously indirect discrimination, where a company applies a practice or policy or procedure, something like that you know, adversely affects a certain individual. So that could be that they apply a policy that inadvertently affects an individual of a certain race. I think we will start to see a lot more of those kinds of cases coming forwards.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Chris. So in a nutshell, very quickly, write everything down, ask for help, check out the Equality Act, and what's the last one? Stay safe.
Stay safe, yeah. Stay safe, look after yourself, and all the best.
Great stuff. Get active. Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot, Chris. Cheers. Over to you, Steve.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Chris. Just to let everyone know, the union does have Union Line. It is the largest law company in the country. All you need to do is reach out to London Region or your officer to find out how to get in touch with them. They don't just do the work stuff. They do a free will service and many other services. Also, the union has many other services as well. This is a good juncture just to say that, you know, take a look on the website, see GMB Extra amongst other things. There's some great facilities. I do want to do a big shout out also just before we go into the next video on ASDA workers, Wilco workers, all of those in retail that we support because it's quite important. We are going to be talking about Buckerville and people in industry, gas and water workers later this afternoon. Just to let you know, just waiting in the wings is both Perry Phillips and Gary Pearce. Officers are going to talk about aviation and other matters, but just basically stay tuned in, and here's a message from Daniel Zeichner.
Hello, I'm Daniel Zeichner, Member of Parliament for Cambridge and a Shadow Environment Minister, particularly specialising in food. I just wanted to say hello to all you GMB members. Well done for organising the event. And just tell you a little bit about why the GMB is so important for Labour MPs like me. Because I think without trade union role, it's stacked against people in this country. And all the resources and the power and the research facilities are all with the employer side. Without trade unions, it make it so much harder for people like me to try and make some kind of impact. I just want to give you three quick
back on now.
Before I was a Shadow Environment Minister, I was a Shadow Transport Minister, particularly working with taxi trade. People often don't realise that with over 300,000 drivers, it's the biggest employer in the transport sector. Thanks to some really nasty deregulation measures a few years ago by the Tories, that's made life a lot harder for a lot of people. There's a lot of cutthroat competition, people moving from one part of the country to the other. And the current licensing rules just don't work. And I'm really grateful to the GMB and some of their national officers for really taking this on and leading the way. And we're hoping we can try and find some ways of getting changes which will solve some of those problems. But without the input of those GMB national officers, I don't think that would be happening. Secondly, in the food sector, as Shadow Environment Minister, I've been appalled to see some of the practices in parts of the food processing sectors, some really low paid workers, really vulnerable people. And again, the national officers have been absolutely key in giving us insight and direct links to people who have been affected. The number of people who have not been able to self-isolate purely because they can't afford to is quite striking, and it's a disgrace that there hasn't been more about this, because I think played a key role in the spread of the virus. And the third group at the moment I'm dealing with are actually GMB members. Tate and Lyle in the sugar industry in London. I knew about the sugar industry as an East Anglian MP knowing about sugar beet, but I didn't know so much about Tate and Lyle. I was really grateful to the local MP Stephen Timms for introducing me, and finding that a huge number of GMB members there in one of the poorest parts of London, and they have drawn attention to me to the particular interests that they have and the need to make sure that those jobs are secured. So just three quick examples of how, as a Labour MP, the work of the GMB is making a real difference. So thank you for being part of the GMB, thank you for working with us, and let's look forward to a Labour government where we can take that work and, instead of just being campaigning against the government, be the government and make the change we want to see.
Hi, thanks very much for that. Perry and Gary, I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind, we have another guest who's actually a bit behind on time and has to move on. Would it be possible to ask Lola and Hazel to just go on ahead of yourselves?
Yeah, no problem.
Super. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring in both Hazel Nolan and Lola McAvoy again, and we're going to bug out from here and leave them to talk about one of the big key issues that GMB is dealing with at the moment in relation to the gas industry.
Steve, Steve's gone. I was going to say, how long have we got? Hi, Hazel, how are you doing? Oh, I think you're still on mute. I think there's something about when they set you live, it automatically puts you on mute. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad. How are you?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I bet you're shattered, are you? We've been seeing non-stop activity from you and the British gas workers. So solidarity with all of them out on strike at the moment. Obviously, that's what we want you to talk about, but it is not right to have you on without mentioning the care worker strike that you organised, which was absolutely historic and unprecedented. So if any employer sees Hazel organising, you better run a mile or just give the workers what they want. So Hazel, tell us a little bit about what's going on in British Gas, why it matters and why we're on strike.
Right, okay. Well, first of all, it's great to be back in London Region, which is the region that I actually started off in GMB. Yeah, so what's happening at the moment is that our members in British Gas, and we have just under 10,000 of them in GMB across the whole of the UK, are engaged today on their 11th day of strike action. And that's in response to British Gas's really heavy-handed negotiation tactics and their use of what we call fire and rehire, which means that if the workers, our members, don't sign up to these new contracts that British Gas are trying to force on them by the 31st of March, then they'll effectively be sacked on the 1st of April. So you could have worked for British Gas for maybe 34 years, for example, and you won't even get redundancy pay. You'll just, your choice is to either like it or lump it. And it's a disgraceful way to negotiate. It's what we've called it is the equivalent of having a gun to your head in terms of negotiations. And just to point out that it was actually the employer that walked away from the negotiation table and not the union. So I know that there's lots of people who've been asking, why are there strikes happening in winter? And why can't you call them off? We don't really have the option of doing that. It wasn't us that provoked the strike. That's something the company tried to say, which is a complete lie. They've got the ability to stop the strikes because if our trade dispute is based on the fire and rehire element of the negotiation, so if they were to withdraw that, then we wouldn't have a valid trade dispute. But they're not doing that.
Hazel, fire and rehire. So in normal times, if a company, say you and I were in business and suddenly the product that we were making became completely, nobody wanted to buy it anymore, we were really struggling, we could go to our workers and try and negotiate different terms and conditions because the company was struggling, and then we would come to an agreement with our staff. With this, all of those talks have broken down, and so why are British Gas allowed to just say, oh well, it didn't matter that we were having all those talks anyway because we're just going to fire and rehire you? Why is that legal?
Well, I mean, not everything that is moral is illegal, unfortunately, and it is just a legal loophole that exists in this country that doesn't exist in a lot of other countries. I'm originally from Ireland, and that isn't even the law there. You wouldn't be able to do this. In most European countries, this is completely unheard of. And I think there's a lot of people who are asking that question. How is that even possible? You sign a contract in good faith, and then someone else can just decide to pull it, and you've got no choice. Especially when the jobs market is going to be that much more difficult because of COVID. We need people to have good, decent jobs like our members do in British Gas, because we need to have an economy that's growing. But I want to pick up on one thing that you said there, Lola, which is even more important and poignant for this strike, is that you might expect some form of negotiation like that in a company that isn't doing very well. British Gas's profits in their heating division, where our engineers, who are the ones who are predominantly out on strike, went up 27% last year. They had a £229 million operating profit in the heating division. The company's total operating profit was £901 million. So this is a profitable company. I know that there's lots of talk about it, and eventually an energy transition and how do we get to a greener economy. People are always going to need, there's always an ongoing concern for this type of business and this type of work. Regardless of how our energy needs are met in the future, we're still going to need people to help us in our homes to keep warm and fix things in our homes. So it's not like it's a business that is dying out. It's a business that's growing.
And COVID is not that's absolutely right, Hazel. And I think what's also been interesting is the public response has been really enthusiastic. And we want to come on in a second to talk about how people can support the strikers and support the members. But before that, so I just want to check, British Gas has not been disproportionately impacted by COVID. It's not one of these businesses that have been really struggling because of COVID, like a lot of businesses have. And so would you say that they've hidden under the guise of the pandemic to try and do this terrible fire and rehire? Do you think they're using the pandemic and the public's distraction as an excuse?
Absolutely, they are. They're telling customers that they're cancelling work because of COVID, when actually it's because of the strike. And they're doing that to try and undermine the workers and the impact that the strike is actually having. But even worse than that, British Gas took loads of money off of the taxpayer in the first lockdown, and they did furlough some of their staff. Those staff that were furloughed, those members of the GMB, they volunteered in their thousands to work with the Trussell Trust, to donate food to the vulnerable and needy who were in need of it at the time. And those members who were not furloughed, they voluntarily signed up to go into the homes of people they knew had COVID in order to keep them warm and safe. I've got one rep in Scotland, and his wife was actually pregnant at the time, and he voluntarily did that for the company because he felt it was a real pull together moment, you know, like everyone needs to go above and beyond. And while he and thousands of our members in GMB were busy doing that, at this exact same time, the company were busy behind the scenes plotting to slash the terms and conditions of our members. And that's the important thing to note, is that these are key workers.
Absolutely.
Paid key workers, you know, and turned around after a pandemic where they put their lives and the lives of their families at risk to keep everyone else safe by slashing their T's and C's. And this strike isn't about pay. It's not because our members are out there trying to strike for more pay, although I would always support a worker in that situation. They're fighting to keep their work-life balance. You know, if you look, anyone wants to have a look at the hashtag Stop the British Gas Fire, these are, you know, mums and dads with their children standing next to their vans, you know, with signs saying that they don't want to lose their time with their families. And no workers have to choose between spending time with their child and feeding their child. And that's effectively the choice that British Gas is trying to force on them.
So, oh, sorry. Hear that there's a bit of like there's an alien in here. All right, that's better. So it's terms and conditions. It's a longer working day. Is that right?
Yes.
And so, what are the changes, and what will the actual real life impact be? Because a lot of the stuff on Twitter, and it's hashtag Stop the British Gas Fire, isn't it? And that a lot of what people have been tweeting is their own stories, and how actually they're not going to be home to put the kids to bed. They're not getting any extra money for the extra hours, but also, isn't it about the quality of the time they spend with our vulnerable in society when they're actually helping them?
Yeah, it is. It's, you know, about not trying to do a rush job when you're trying to fix someone's boiler. And obviously, when you're operating in gas, that's an extremely dangerous type of work to do. You know, I wouldn't want someone coming in fixing my gas boiler and then being really concerned about rushing to the next job. I'd want them to do a thorough work and make sure everything was safe. After that, like you said, the work-life balance, British Gas are trying to get 156 extra unpaid hours out of our members. That's a month worth of work. And that is time away from their family, and not wanting to reward them for it. I could go on about the terms and conditions, but like you said, if people want to hear more, they can go on the hashtag. And what I think has been really powerful about this strike is that it's the voice of the grassroots members that's been coming through, and, you know, as a union, projecting our members and their emotional stories. I think that's what's so amazing and inspiring about this whole dispute.
Absolutely. And Steve's here to hurry us along.
I'm so sorry.
We
are just so over this afternoon. It's you know, obviously important.
Steve,
Go ahead.
I'd very quickly say that if people do want to donate to the strikers, because obviously when you're on strike, you don't get any pay. And as the strike continues, it's going to be harder and harder for people to have the financial ability to strike. So, Hazel, how can people donate to the British Gas Strike Fund?
There are two ways. We would ask that if people are donating from branches, that they donate straight towards their region. But individuals can donate through a crowdfunder. And if you just Google GMB British Gas, you'll see the notice board, and it has that as well. And the other ask that I would ask people to do is to also, there's a tool on the GMB website where you can auto-generate an email to the board of directors. So if people have time, it literally takes 10 seconds to do that. That would be great too, please.
Great stuff. Thank you. Have a good
Thank you so much. You too, sister.
Thanks very much. I'm going to bring back in both Gary and Perry, who kindly made way for Hazel there, and I thank you for everyone who's been with us this afternoon so far. Again, honestly, we can't cover all of the gamuts that we really wanted to today, but the key here is that what we really wanted to do is give you a flavour of the union and some of the work that we do. Obviously, we're keen to see you join us for future events and get the message out as well. We'll be putting up the link on how to join us again shortly during the broadcast. But let me now pass over to both Gary and Perry to tell you about aviation, Buckavore, water, gas, and everything. Well, so I think we covered off gas, obviously, but aviation is probably one of the big ones.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Some very inspiring speeches and presentations today. It's been a really good couple of hours. Very, very interesting. But I'd just kind of like to cover the aviation side a little bit, and predominantly Heathrow Airport. My name's Perry Phillips. I'm the GMB London Regional Organiser. I have membership responsibilities at Heathrow Airport, and I share those responsibilities with my work colleague, Trevelyan McLeod, where we've both worked very, very extremely hard for our members over the past 10-11 months now. As you know, we've gone through very, very difficult times at Heathrow Airport. As aviation is the worst hit sector due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw through the months right from March up until now the devastation and impact that it's had on aviation. And again, talking my experience with my members and my branches, all our activists, Heathrow's been devastated. It's been paralysed. Aviation has just been paralysed. And what comes with that is, our members, the workers impacted at Heathrow, because Heathrow 2019 had record passengers. On record, one of the best passenger go-throughs at Heathrow ever recorded, and recorded record profits. And over the space of 10 months, that's gone down to now, massive losses at Heathrow with Heathrow Limited itself, and also that it's impacted on many companies within the direct and indirect supply chains. We straight away acknowledge of what we need to do, what we need to do to protect our members the best we can. And what did we do as the GMB? What did we do as a GMB union at the time of the crisis? We got organised, we got active, and we had to raise our game very, very quickly, which was very important. GMB aviation branches at Heathrow, officers and activists got together and launched a campaign to save and protect, and lobbied the government through this campaign to protect jobs, and also to lobby government through our local MPs, Ruth Cadbury, local Labour MPs, Ruth Cadbury, Seema Malhotra, and we've also good work from Sarah Owen over in Luton as well, that have campaigned through Parliament for the aviation and the London airports. Heathrow is the largest single site employer in the UK. Since March 2020, unemployment has soared, because obviously the nature of the business, because of the paralysed of Heathrow Airport, and it's had a devastating effect on the local communities. The GMB campaign has prevented many more job losses, and have worked extremely hard with employers at Heathrow to mitigate redundancies. We're still going through difficult times at Heathrow, but our Save Our London campaigns will carry on, and will continue to fight for workers and members at Heathrow Airport. you know, we are demanding, you know, we have taken it to Parliament, because what a lot of people don't realise of being a part of a union, being a part of the GMB, it's powerful. You know, the union, the GMB is powerful. You know, we've worked closely with local MPs, and those MPs have taken it into the heart of Parliament. It's been debated because of our aviation campaign with the GMB. You know, look, I mean, I could do a speech for half an hour, and I know we've time consumed, but look, you know, the GMB at Heathrow, we're not just the GMB. You know, we're not just the GMB. We're a family. You know, we are a family. That's from the Heathrow, all our members, activists, our branches that's doing fantastic work. You know, we are one big family, and we stick together. We are not just a union at Heathrow. Obviously, we are a massive family, and we'll continue to do that. We'll continue to fight. We'll continue to fight for a specific state support package, you know, a financial package to help the aviation industry out, but it has to also protect jobs. My message to everyone in aviation, you know, anybody that's listening to this and looking and viewing this is to join, you know, is to join the GMB, you know, join our family at Heathrow, become a member, you know, become a member of the GMB, because my message is get active with us and get organised. Unity is strength. So I'll just hand over to my work colleague, Gary, my fellow work colleague in aviation, Gary, and I'll just bring you in.
Thanks, Perry. As Perry said, my name is Gary Pearce. I'm the regional organiser for aviation. I also have responsibility for British Gas and another couple of other employers. As Perry's already said, the COVID-19 has devastated aviation. You know, it's some of the airports I look after, like London City Airport and Stansted, the passenger numbers are down to 2% of 2019. We've done a lot of work with the employers there. With Blue Handed, who look after the Ryanair contract, we've managed to get a no redundancy agreement. There's been temporary changes to terms and conditions in a lot of the companies that I look after, but they are temporary. The furlough scheme has been a huge help to our members throughout aviation and across the country. You know, as the solicitor said earlier, there was a lot of confusion about what the coronavirus job retention scheme meant and what furlough meant. We've got places now where people have taken reduced hours. But what for GMB members and for people watching this, what people need to understand is that if you take a part-time contract from a full-time contract, you're still entitled to 80% of your last year's salary. And we've come across a number of employers, and we don't know what they're claiming off their HMRC, but they're certainly only paying, or started to only pay our members a smaller percentage of their wages. So, you know, as Perry said, we are a family. We need to stick together in this. And the only way that we'll bring our members through this pandemic with some of these rogue employers is to have the strength of the membership to actually challenge them. And I've made it absolutely clear to the companies that I look after in aviation, when this is finished, we're coming back for them, and we're coming back for our members' terms and conditions. We're not going to just sit on the laurels and go, well, actually, people have got used to it. We're coming back for those terms and conditions. They're temporary. But at the moment, it's very difficult. All we can do is support members in aviation. And because we can't get into the airports, we can't get to speak to the members. So we're doing these sort of things to try and keep people in touch with what we're doing. I'll go back to what other people have already said. If there's anything you're concerned about, pick up the phone, talk to us. If I can't help you, or if Perry can't help you, then we've got the solicitors that will. Don't be quiet about it. Just pick up the phone and call the GMB, and we will do everything we can to assist you.
Thank you, Gary, for that. I'm mindful that we're really running down the clock. We've actually had a 2-hour event this afternoon, but there are a couple of things I just wanted to touch on. We do protect people in the manufacturing industries. Back of all, the people who manufacture the food that you pick up in supermarkets, most of the major supermarkets, they prepare everything from the pizzas to those ready meals that you stick in the microwave. We've got loads and loads of workers there we represent. I've mentioned some of the stores. Also, I know a message has come up about courier and delivery and vaccination priority. We've already written out to the DFT. The GMB has a working relationship with both government and local government departments on a regular basis. I know we're sort of coming to the end. I wanted to thank some of our contributors this afternoon. Not all of them are on screen now. We've got Dean Gilligan there, Vaughan West, Lola McAvoy, Mick Lancaster, sitting in the dark, I think Gordon White, and the like. But ultimately, the big message that we have here is that thank you for joining us. The way to join the union is basically just go to the GMB website. You can click on the link on the GMB website. You'll see join GMB. There's a link just going across the base of your screen right now. But thank you, thank you, thank you. We hope to do more of these events. Clearly, we believe there's a value. We'll get out better comms on these to make sure more people can be reached in the long term. The other group I want to do just a very quick shout out to is office workers. There's a huge amount of office workers who haven't felt they've needed a union in the past, primarily because they haven't wanted to say anything or they've been the silent majority. Ultimately, we want to hear from you. We want you to join because you need protection. Most of you have never put in a grievance, whether you've worked in ASOS and you've suddenly seen huge redundancies like we've dealt with, or you've worked for one of the other major corporations where you've had staff losses. Unions can be there for you, especially even in a work situation such as this. Having union gives you more strength. We represent everyone from solicitors down to hospital workers to school staff, as you've learned this afternoon, gas workers, and many, many more. I don't know if anyone has any just last comments before we wrap up for the day. Dean, go ahead, please. Dean, Dean
I was muted. Yeah, I just want to give a big shout out, which hasn't happened over the course of the day, to those refuse collectors, street sweepers, and recyclers who have also been working throughout the pandemic and should be recognised the key workers that they are. Because if they weren't collecting our rubbish, we'll have the need for a new Pied Piper to sort out another pandemic. So a big shout out to all those refuse collectors and street cleaners and recyclers. Thank you.
Dean, thank you very much for the mention. We cover so many different council staff across the country in different roles. London region goes all the way from Norwich across to Milton Keynes, all the way back down towards the edge of London, going near Slough. We've got social care workers, people who are actually visiting people in their home. We have individuals who are doing cleaning in schools and janitorial services. We go all the way across into Essex and then back into London. It is a huge region with a huge amount of members, and we love to serve you. I know Vaughan had a comment he wanted to also say as well. Vaughan, go ahead. You're unmuted. Oh, I don't think Vaughan can hear us. Okay, and Perry just wanted to do a shout out as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention another important part of our campaign, the aviation campaign that we're doing, and that's on health and safety. You know, we are challenging employers to improve their health and safety at the airports as well. You know, because of the new viral strain that's come into the country, and also you know, demanding employers within the aviation industry to revisit their risk assessments because of the strains. So I just wanted to make that point.
Well, look, thank you very much for being with us this afternoon, even if you just dipped in and dipped out. We hope to see you again and have this important message of staying safe, being well, looking out for each other, and don't forget that GMB London, GMB Union is there for you.
From sunrise until sunset, and dusk until dawn, every minute of every hour of every day, on the front line, it's key workers keeping our country moving, putting themselves at risk to keep others safe, for the vulnerable, for the sick, for the young and the old. We rise to the challenge. We care, we protect, we help, we fix, we deliver for everyone. We will get through this, and it's thanks to our key workers. We're proud to represent heroes, and not all heroes wear capes. Key workers deserve recognition, protection and support. Get us on your side. Join us today.